Phoebe is our first Spectral character in Renacida, and with that brings a new Spectral Frazzle mechanic. In this video, I'm going to go over everything you need to know to make the most out of your Phoebe, from her kit, weapons, teams, rotations, and more. So, let's build Phoebe. Phoebe is a Spectral Rectifier character with the combat roles of main damage dealer, concerto efficiency, and Spectral Frazzle. She can be played as a main DPS or a sub DPS depending on which you choose. At the moment, her best role is main DPS with Spectral Rover, but we'll get into that in the team section. So, let's move on to her kit. Okay, so let's look at Phoebe's kit in game. As you can see, her forte bar, her normal attack, and her skill all look different than what they would normally look like. In her forte bar, she can have 120 prayer and she regens 5 per second. And this is basically what you need to even use her kit, whether it be the main DPS or the sub DPS. If you hold her normal attack, it will enter DPS mode or absolution mode. If you hold her skill, it will enter confession or sub DPS mode. So Phoebe, when she's in her main DPS mode, needs Spectral Frazzle on the enemies to do increased damage. So you'll need to run her with Spectral Rover so that Spectral Rover can inflict Spectral Frazzle on the enemies so that Phoebe can do more damage. Otherwise, if you're in sub DPS mode, you have a lot of team options, to be honest. So as you can see that her forte is full, let's quickly look at her main DPS mode. You can go up to an enemy, you need to hold it, and now you can see, okay, they all died. Well, anyways, I'll get into the water so you can see again. So now that you can see that it's yellow, she's in DPS mode. This is the absolution state. So whenever you see in her kit, it says absolution, that's her DPS mode. So now that you've chosen your mode, you can just hold E, teleport to it by clicking E again. So you hold E, click it again, and you can teleport to it. You want to do this when there's an enemy in here or an enemy nearby. I would have done it to them, but they died. But when you're in this state, now you'll want to Resonance Liberation. You'll want to do this with as many stacks as possible to maximize the damage from her Resonance Liberation. Then after you've chosen your mode, use her skill, teleport it to it, use the Resonance Liberation on DPS mode. Now you do 1, 2, 3 basic attacks, and now you can see that her normal attack has that yellow thing again. Now you hold it for a heavy attack, and then she attacks. Also note that when there's actually enemies, there are going to be mirrors around this, which I'll show later. And they will also do damage to the enemies when they are inside this circle, inside of the ring of mirrors. So basically you keep doing 3 normal attacks and then you hold it for a heavy attack. 3 normal attacks, heavy attack. 3 normal attacks, heavy attack. And now you've pretty much done her entire main DPS rotation. Okay, so now I'll go through her main DPS rotation a little bit quicker. So when you swap onto her, you'll have some time to activate her skill. And then you need to choose your mode, use the mirrors, E or skill. Now you use Resonance Liberation, and now you just do 1, 2, 3 basic attack, heavy attack. 1, 2, 3 heavy attack. 1, 2, 3 heavy attack. 1, 2, 3 heavy attack. And now you can outro skill, do some damage, and now you're doing your rotation again. Okay, so let's look at her sub DPS mode. To enter this, we'll hold skill instead of a normal attack, and now that her forte bar is blue, we know that we're in sub DPS mode. And we'll pretty much do the same thing we did. We'll activate her echo, E for skill, use Resonance Liberation, and 1, 2, 3 heavy attack. 1, 2, 3 heavy attack. Now the enemy will just be inside the ring instead of where I'm aiming outside. There's just nobody here and it's easier to explain, but that's pretty much it for her main DPS and sub DPS modes. There's a lot of options for her teams, but we'll get into that in the team section. So basically the Spectral Frazzle is just a damage over time effect, or a dot or a DOT depending on what you want to call it. And there's only a couple of ways to really increase this damage, as it's pretty much a fixed value. The only ways to increase it are through the confession state of her outro skill and her weapon, which can increase it by 30%. If you want to know more about Spectral Frazzle, I made an entire video on that, so you can check that out if you want. But basically, TLDR, it's a DOT effect that'll do damage over time, and that means she won't do as much damage when she's on field. So when it comes to Echoes for Phoebe, you really have 3 main options. You have the Eternal Radiance set, which is her best set and recommended option. Secondly, you have the Celestial Light set, which is the old Spectra set that Jinshi uses. So if you don't have an Eternal Radiance set yet, you can definitely just use the Celestial Light. It isn't too much worse, but Eternal Radiance is really good for her, especially since her Nightmare Morning Aches can increase the damage dealt to enemies with Spectral Frazzle by 100%, and you get a free 12% Spectral damage bonus just by equipping the Echo, and you get a 25% Spectral damage bonus from the Sauna effects, and 20% crit rate, which is pretty nice. So you'll definitely have some more options to be able to use a crit damage main stat. That is if you can get enough crit rate. If you don't have a weapon, I am using her weapon so I get 36% crit rate. So it makes it pretty easy. I only have 64, but I get the 20%, so I'll have 84.7, and I mean that's like plenty. And then I'll have like quite a bit of crit rate. Lastly, your option is pretty much going to be lingering tunes. Not the best option, but something if you just don't have anything else. Otherwise, I would definitely farm for an Eternal Radiance set for her since it fits her so well. Otherwise, you can just use a Jinshi set if you have Jinshi until you get an Eternal Radiance set. For the main stats, you definitely want to go with crit rate or crit damage on your forecast Echo. Given that you get a free 20% crit rate from the Echo set, you'll want to try and get enough crit rate so that you can run a crit damage main stat. For the 3 costs, go with Spectral Damage or Attack Percent, whichever has better substats, though Spectral Damage is ideal, so try to go for that. For the 1 cost, go with Attack Percent. For substats, you want to go with crit rate and crit damage with enough energy regen to be able to use her Resonance Liberation each rotation. I found that 115 was a bit too little, so I was always struggling to use her Resonance Liberation, just wasting time trying to get that back. So you'll definitely want to go for like 125 to like 145. That should be pretty good, depending on what your rotation is and who your teammates are. After that, you'll want attack percent and basic attack and heavy attack damage bonus. I'm going to make another video on the value of Phoebe's weapon and compare it to the other weapons to help you decide if you should get it, but here's a quick graph of what I found to be the relative order between what is currently available. Note that these calculations are more towards a double TPS setup with Spectral Rover and a healer support, so that'll vary with your team and build. It's also just for her personal damage and doesn't include the damage of Spectral Frazzle and off-field damage, but it won't be too far off. Okay, so I did most of my team testing on the first Hazard Tower floor with the Ape, and I'll denote if I fought anything else in here. So first, Verena and Spectral Rover, not the greatest, almost took the entire time, wouldn't really recommend. Shorekeeper and Spectral Rover in the Absolution state was pretty good, only took like a minute. I think it was actually my best run. Also, if it doesn't denote, I was using Confession state. Otherwise, if it says Absolution or A, it was the Absolution. If it says C, and then it's Confession. And if it doesn't say, it's also Confession. Shorekeeper, Spectral Rover, and Phoebe in the Absolution state versus level 90 Scar does have some Spectro resistance, but it also doesn't have any buffs from the Tower of Adversity except for some attack percent. And it took 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So that's kind of interesting. Definitely shows one of Phoebe's weak points. Honestly, not really sure what to say besides the buff that she gets in the Hazard Tower is kind of insane. Shorekeeper and Spectral Rover with her signature weapon is just kind of like a baseline average team that I kind of want to like go with, and that took a minute 38, minute 39 on 2 runs. So I mean that's like a pretty like safe clear time, I'd say. I guess it's also kind of important to note that I haven't used Phoebe all that much. I did kind of do like probably close to around 5-6 hours of testing, so some of the times could be worse, some could be better, but they're all pretty like relative. I mean, and then I did Shorekeeper and Spectral Rover with an R5 Jinzo Keeper as like a free-to-play option compared to like her signature weapon, and it was quite a bit worse on this team. And then also Shorekeeper, Spectral Rover on Eternal Radiance and Phoebe on Eternal Light to see the difference of which one each should be on. I only have 1 of each, I don't have 2 of each, and that was only like slightly worse. So I definitely have Phoebe on her signature set and Spectral Rover on either Moonlit or Eternal Light, whichever you want to go with. And with Verena and Sanhua in the Confession state took exactly like 2 minutes, barely cleared, but it was enough. So if you want to use that, it should be fine. Shorekeeper and Sanhua in the Absolution state, not great because she doesn't have Spectral Frazzle stacks, took 2 minutes, and another time she didn't even clear. Shorekeeper Sanhua in the Confession state, cleared just fine, pretty solid clear. Verena Mortefi, would not recommend because Shorekeeper Mortefi didn't clear, and then the second time I did it, it wasn't even close. So she definitely is going to need Spectral Rover if you're going to use Mortefi, it's looking like. Shorekeeper and Yinlin in Confession state, just barely cleared. Shorekeeper Yinlin in Absolution state, did not clear, would not recommend. Shorekeeper and Jeji in Confession state did, I mean, it cleared better than Yinlin, but still not great. Shorekeeper Jeji in Absolution state also did not clear like Yinlin's, would not recommend. Verena and Jinshi, because in Phoebe's outro, she shreds Spectral Res by 10%, so I wanted to try that out, and did clear pretty fine. Shorekeeper and Jinshi cleared slightly worse. Verena can give some coordinated attacks, which gives Jinshi slightly more forte bar, so I think that's why she cleared slightly quicker. And Spectral Rover on the Rejuvenating Glow, Sanhua on Moonlit Cloud, and Phoebe in the Absolution state cleared quite well. Minute 19, cleared slightly worse than the previous Shorekeeper and Spectral Rover Absolution. Spectral Rover was also on the Eternal Light and not on Moonlit Cloud in this run. So that's also something that I might be able to amplify her even more with the Moonlit instead of Eternal Light, and probably get this under sub-minute actually. But I mean, what a free-to-play option. Like, what, this team's premium Shorekeeper with her signature weapon, Spectre Rover. Honestly, an R5 weapon is pretty much comparable to the Emerald of Genesis and Camellia's weapon, and I think Chang Li's is slightly better, but I mean, not that crazy of a difference. But yeah, I mean, a premium team versus a really free-to-play team. I mean, I was using Commando of I think I was using Camellia's weapon, but it's basically the same as the Emerald of Genesis. I just don't have an Emerald of Genesis, but I just used it for the crit rate because I don't really have a DPS rejuvenating glow set, so I was kind of like, it was kind of like a bad set. Also, in terms of how well these characters were built, I mean, Verena and Shorekeeper don't really matter because their personal damage isn't there. My Spectre Rover could definitely be built better. All of her talents are at least level 6 though, but definitely needs some more leveling. I'll definitely update like a pinned comment if I can with a new run when I actually get some more weekly boss mats to further level up my Spectre Rover and see how that can actually like change some of the runs. My Sanhua is fully built. My Mortefi is pretty much built. He has, I think, at least level 8 talents on all of his important ones. He was also using the Static Mist pistol for the extra 12% attack buff that you can give Phoebe by swapping into her, though that isn't like anything crazy. It's not even like, it's level 72, so not the greatest personal damage, but I think leveling up Mortefi can get him to clear, but Sanhua is still going to be better. Yinlin is fully built. She's using Moonlit Cloud, same with Jeji, fully built, both on Moonlit Cloud, not on the new coordinated attack buffing set. That would be actually a lot better because it will still increase attack of the active resonator and increase their personal damage by quite a bit. So definitely recommend getting, I actually kind of need to get that, so I definitely recommend getting one of those sets for both of them if you have them. Jinshi is pretty built. I'd like her to be built more because I really like her, but she has like okay build. She can clear just fine. My Phoebe is pretty much built fully, only a few substats missing for like crit rate, crit damage, but definitely in a usable state. So obviously missing Chang Li here. She's the only limited character I don't have at the moment, so I'll be picking her up when she runs in the next patch. So until then, we're gonna have to hold off on me testing her with Phoebe. Definitely be testing her extensively when that comes out, but that'll be in a Chang Li guide. I also think that she has a lot of potential to work with Phoebe, so pretty unfortunate I'm not able to test her at the moment, but so I'll just have to wait a few weeks to test her then and make that in the Chang Li video. So lastly, let's just look at her sequences to see if you want to like get those. I actually had an insane 10 pull, got 2 Phoebes, first time ever out of the 4 gacha games I play. Well, I obviously didn't activate it for all the testing that I did. I'm also not sure if I'd want to activate it because I kind of want to like some more like free-to-play friendly content, and I mean, it doesn't really do that much, but I kind of want to keep all of my characters at sequence 0 and R1 at the most. But yeah, let's just get into the sequences. It just increases her outro skill damage essentially on the sequence 1. Not too crazy, but I mean, yeah, it'll increase her damage. Sequence 2 is a little bit better. Further increases the absolution outro skill damage, which is the main DPS damage or yellow damage. Or while in confession, the blue state sub DPS grants 120% more damage amplification for spectral frazzle, so further increases her off-field damage, which is, I mean, is pretty great. Sequence 3 increases the damage multiplier of the Forte heavy attack Starfish for both absolution and confession, so it'll increase the damage that she does when after the 1 2 3 heavy attack, 1 2 3 heavy attack. And for sequence 4, reduces spectral res by 10% 30 seconds by basic attacking or dodge countering. I mean, pretty solid, but I mean, not that crazy. Sequence 4, sequence 5, I mean, they're okay, but at that point, obviously you're going for a C6, and that increases the duration of the stagnation effect for up to 12 enemies, which is like the time freeze that all the enemies can't move, so that increases the duration of that. It doesn't say how long, but I mean, oh, additional 2 seconds. And when in the absolution or confession, summoning of the ring mirrors with resonance skill increases Phoebe's attack by 10% for 20 seconds and triggers an extra heavy attack at the ring mirrors location, and the heavy attack doesn't consume divine voice and is not considered casting a heavy attack, so I assume that that means that it won't consume stamina and it just literally like an extra attack. So like you get 4 attacks in the main DPS and 2 attacks on the sub DPS, so I'm assuming that gives you 2 on the sub DPS, so 4 total, and since you already have 4 on the main DPS, you get 8 total. So basically, I mean, seems like it doubles the damage, so I mean, pretty good. But personally, I don't think I would go for any sequences on Phoebe. I did get her weapon, which the crit rate is pretty useful for building her, and I do like that she has more increased off-field damage, especially if I want to run her in like the main DPS mode, and further increase her off-field damage when I'm using that mode. Overall, Phoebe is a pretty cool character with what I would argue as one of the most unique kits in the game at the moment. I think it's hard to say if she's on the same level as the other top DPSs like Jinchi, Camellia, and Carlotta. The buff she gets in this Hazard Tower is really big, so we'll have to wait and see how she compares to them in the next Tower Diversity rotation. That's all I have for now. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and let me know if you found anything different from your own time with Phoebe. If I'm wrong about something, I'd like to correct it, so let me know. I hope this video was helpful so that you'll be able to build and enjoy your Phoebe. She's a lot of fun, and I hope you win your 50-50. That's all I have for now. Phoebe weapon video soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.